Justin said he is going to be hanging me with a rope today, so I'm not too sure what's going on. We just started rolling. What's going on, Justin?
Gotcha, Josh. So here's like the deal. A few videos ago, we were talking about China. And Josh, one of the things that I think you and I very much agree with, and I think it's the right thing, is there's this contrarian mindset. If someone is doing something, or if the group says this is what should be done, or this is the investment trade to be in, run. Do not walk away from whatever that thing is. They're probably going to be wrong. And so nothing against the contrarian mindset. That's near and dear to my heart, resonates with me. But going to China, when we did our China video again 2 days or so ago, you mentioned the concept of there being some, let's say, contrarian place in China. We'll say, the markets, in China's completely imploding. Maybe pick up some of the big names, the Alibabas, the what is it, WePay or whatever, that nonsense. And so the first part of that I would say is 100% absolutely correct. But the follow-up to that front is that this only works. I think the contrarian capitalism play only works if you have the underlying assumption that you have rule of law, the underlying assumption that you're going to have markets that will at least try to maintain the veneer of non-interference. Not that we're much better in the United States, but my point is like there's at least this attempt to do that. There's an old phrase that goes, never sell, or the problem was, I guess if you want to go back to, it's said about Russia when the Tsar was overthrown in 19 whatever at the end of World War I. I don't know if this is true or not, but this is kind of what I associate with in my mind, is that the capitalist problem, even though they were right, was that they sold the Bolsheviks the rope that was in turn used to hang the capitalists that sold them the rope in the first place. So in other words, the point is that if you're going to have capitalism is down, or the freedom, if capitalism could be said to be philosophically the freedom of choice, I can choose this over that, I can discriminate. In other words, I want this product over that product, I want to choose this car over that car, whatever. Then the point is that the individual person has the freedom to choose, and for whatever reason they want to choose, the product, whatever. The opposite of that is coercion, where you would have, or fear, where you have the choice imposed upon someone, you take that away from someone. And the other day, I think it was offline, we were talking about the concept of, and I've made this concept or this comment before because I've heard it elsewhere, that the economic situation is downstream, or the macroeconomics is downstream from geopolitics. And it is true that money is an incredible source of motivation, an incredible source of power. But at the end of the day, money is the means, not the end. And I want to be really, really, really certain people don't assume money to be an end within itself. Money, if you're using it for something, then you are using it as a means to something. You want to buy something, you want to buy out someone, or you want to bribe someone, whatever, right? But there's this underlying, it's not the thing in of it's gammon talking about units of currency versus buying something for a real goods and service. So anyways, that's kind of like the overview on that front. And that's something that I wanted to throw back to you and hear your thoughts on it. Make sure I'm not misrepresenting you or putting thoughts in your head or words in your mouth.
No, I think you have that pretty well. And just speaking of the China trade, I am looking more and more into it. Right now, I have a massive portion of my portfolio into a certain company that I believe to do very well in the coming months. But after that, I am definitely plan on either going the long Chinese currency or getting some of the massive tech names like Alibaba or Tencent. So you have my point down perfectly.
Yeah. So like I said, I think that like the contrarian, don't get me wrong, that's near and dear to my heart. That resonates with me, Josh. Every time people talk about YouTube followers or Twitter, I just cringe. The last thing that I if you ever met me in person, well, obviously you have, but anyone else who's ever met me in person knows that what other people think of me is not necessarily a high on the list of things that motivate me. Of course, it's different for other people. But anyways, that was the thing from China, and more so, I would say the bigger picture on this front is that money through greed can be a powerful motivation for people. But what's even a more powerful motivator than greed is fear. And fear comes from the barrel of a gun, or fear can very easily come from the barrel of a gun. One of my favorite authors makes a comment that not even a rich man can survive a poor man's bullet. So
yeah. And so what were you talking about when you were saying that don't sell the rope to someone who's going to use it to hang you with it?
Oh, so it's like, let's say you're a capitalist or whatever, you believe in the free market. And let's say you've got some, Bolshevik or some communist or whatever, right? That, maybe has slightly different views on the way the system should be run than you. And perhaps part of those views is that, well, rather than try to win the argument, through reason, logic, and actually empirical facts and proven results. It's just far better to kill the people who would raise the objection in the first place. And how convenient is it that the capitalism through free market will sell rope? And if you're the Bolshevik or whatever, right, you just simply buy the rope from the capitalist and turn around and use the rope that the capitalist sold you to hang the capitalist. So from the other side, the thing is that you want to be very careful not to sell rope to people who want to hang you, because yes, you might make money in the short term, but it's going to be incredibly foolish in the long term. If you want a less silly example of this would be when you go over to China. I think it was like in the mid 90s when China started opening up, at least to America, at least when industry started going over in earnest over there. We sent over, and as I understand it, part of the reasons that firms were allowed to build factories over there was because we basically had to teach the Chinese, okay, listen, here's our industrial secrets. Here's the technology. Here's how we make this stuff happen. They had no clue what was going on. They still can't make it themselves. But the point is that the only way the Chinese would say, okay, yeah, we'll let you build the factories, and yeah, we'll give you cheap, unit labor costs, and we'll do all this stuff. But because they're basically just ripping off the Americans, or they're ripping off the countries that are exporting technology and sharing their trade secrets in order to build iPhones or whatever, over there. And you can say, well, Justin, they signed these agreements, and no, it's just ink on a page. Ink on a page. It means nothing.
So Justin, what are you arguing that me buying Chinese tech is actually going to hurt me in the future? And if so, can you explain that further?
It's not that I think that your premise is wrong. Like remember we've talked about signs, math signs on the side of the road. I think you're doing the math correctly. I just think that the signs that you're using to figure out what the numbers are, you need to add, subtract, whatever. I think those might be fooling you. Or not fooling you, but those might be slightly less than truthful.
Okay, I understand that, and I am a trader, a short-term trader at that. Well, what I consider short-term, most people nowadays consider to be ultra long-term on a monthly to yearly time frame. As people are so concerned with the now, they don't really have a future plan, which I think China is actually very good at having a future plan, and they probably have a future plan to take over. And I understand that, but I also have a degree of hope and optimism with the rest of the world, which something like that will not happen. And I am fine buying Chinese tech now, which I don't think is really going to do much to push the needle. I plan on making money for myself because I myself am a greedy capitalist, which this might be proving your point perfectly. Am I buying the rope to hang myself? Possibly. But I hope that I could innovate and make myself a saw in the meantime.